Okay,
Okay,
second round.
second round.
Let's go.
Today we want to configure the cache that we use here. We want to set, for example, how long will it last and stuff like that. So as always, configuration in Quarkus is done via application properties. So what we can do, we have some properties here and I just pasted them in. So it always starts with Quarkus cache caffeine because it's a caffeine-based cache. That's the library they use underneath. And then you need to specify the name of the cache.
Okay.
And then you have basically these four properties. You can configure an initial capacity. So this is how big the cache is initially created. You might notice also from hash maps or stuff, they have an initial capacity, and then when you outgrow this capacity, they need to reallocate get more memory. And this takes a bit of time. So you wouldn't want to start too low, but maybe also not too big, so it doesn't allocate like the whole memory. Keep in mind, this is in memory, so it consumes your memory.
But this is the capacity means that this will be 3 requests that will be cached, or is this
3 different records basically?
Okay.
So 3 different queries we could cache now initially,
Mm-hmm.
but we could at the moment we could cache 10. So with the fourth, it would grow the storage it uses internally and allocate more memory.
Okay.
And then we could store up to 10. And if you go over 10, then it drops some old ones.
Okay.
Caffeine also has some properties where you can configure some different caching mechanics and strategies. But we will focus on the main important stuff here. So at the moment we could store like 10 records, and we can have a look at that soon. Let's make it a bit smaller for easier testing.
Okay. What do you usually put in there? What's a good number for, I don't know.
It depends on your application. So you can also make it unbound, which is super not recommended because then your memory can grow and grow and grow.
Okay.
But for example, if I go back to this address validation idea, I might have some different configurations, not just one, but for different markets, for example, I might have different configurations. In that case, I might know even exactly how many I need to cache.
Okay.
So then I can just enter the number here. Maybe add a couple of extra to be safe when in future there's more or so. But then you can know the number.
But for address validation, for example,
Yeah.
you would pass in an address.
Yes.
And you would get back if it's valid or not, right?
Yes.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
But for addresses, for example, they are unique. Like
Yeah,
I don't
you would
see.
not cache the address. You would not cache the address.
Okay.
I would cache the config I need for validating this address.
Okay. Because I thought, okay,
the address is always different, and
okay.
You will also not get two same addresses probably in a row or in a short time. But the config that you need, where it's written, how should a phone number look like? How should the name field look like, or whatever. For example, phone numbers are different in different countries. This config that you might need to read from a separate service somewhere else in your company or in the internet or from some disk or something. This can be really expensive, and you don't want to do this on every address validation. So you read it once, you store it, and you might invalidate it if the address format is changed later. But until it is changed, which is a manual process, you could store it forever, basically.
Okay.
and you would never need to reload it again. Why would you?
So if you
doesn't
do it
change.
if you have only for, I don't know, 20 countries,
yeah,
the
then put
configuration,
in
then
the
you could
20
just,
and be happy.
okay, got it.
Maybe go with 30, and then you're safe when somebody adds another one.
Okay.
Yeah. On the other hand, it also depends on how big is the thing that you cache. The result can also be bigger than just this string. You can have a complete object that you cache.
Okay.
Because it's just an in-memory cache, so it just stores this object. So if you have a super big object there, then you should probably not cache like 5,000 of them.
What?
If it's just a string like this one we saw before, then 5,000 would not worry me at all.
Yeah, okay.
So it really depends on your application, on what you are caching, and so on.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we also have these two properties here. So you can have expire after write. So if you could, by default, if you don't configure them, then the cache entry lives until maybe the cache needs to drop something.
Okay.
But otherwise, it would not be automatically removed. If we say expire after write, then it would be after we created the entry, it would live for 5 minutes. So
okay.
when we first called the method, it was actually executed and calculated the value, and then the cache entry would live for 5 minutes.
Okay.
So this you could use to say, hey, every 5 minutes I want to get an update. I want to get the new data.
Okay. So this would be something that you don't need the weather for every minute. For example, if you just want to ask for the weather info right now, then you would cache this, for example, for an hour.
Yeah.
And then after an hour, you get a new one. Okay, got it. Okay.
Probably the next day forecast will not change during the next hour.
Yeah, okay.
And then we also have expire after access. So this is basically a expire after read. So if we continuously use this value, if we have continuous calls to this value, then we keep it in memory. And if we stop using it, then it's removed again. This can be used to, basically free up the memory again if you don't need it anymore. So there might be something that you currently need and you need it for a couple of days, but then maybe a blog post or something. Just thinking of an example.
Yeah.
When it's published, it will be accessed a lot. So it's accessed and accessed, so it keeps it alive, it stays in the cache. But after a couple of days, maybe the traffic dies down, nobody's visiting the page anymore, so you can also drop it from the cache again. That's the idea of this expire after access, so you can free up the memory. If nobody is caring for it, then you also don't need to cache it.
Okay. So that's more of a popularity kind of
basically
limitation,
in that direction. Yeah.
Not a current information that you want to keep just for. Okay.
Yeah, if you need to stay up to date after a certain time interval, then you need to expire after write. And if you just want to free up when nobody cares anymore, then you can use the expire after access.
Okay. How often do you use both in a setup?
It really just depends on what you need.
Okay.
If we go back to the address validation thing, it could be, so I would not have both probably, and would have a manual invalidation.
If one expires, then the cache will also expire, or only if both expire?
If one,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could say like, if nobody cares for 5 minutes, remove it, and after 60 minutes, definitely remove it.
Okay.
So that would be, a combination of those. Yeah. And if you don't have it, it stays in Yep.
Okay, nice.
So let's test this with the initial capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Let me quickly restart Quarkus. So we call weather for Stuttgart again. And then we also call for Karlsruhe.
I think you might have to write a test in
Postman.
Postman, yeah.
For now, it will suffice. So we see we have 26.
Mm-hmm.
Let's also get the 27th. Then we use only Karlsruhe, so I don't have to change 2 fields. So, and the 25th is also still there.
Okay.
So these 3 are here.
Okay.
But as soon as we get the next one, then it has to drop 1.
How does it determine which one to drop? The first one? So it's first in, first out?
It depends on the cache configuration it uses. Actually, I don't know what's the default.
Okay.
So 27 is still here, 26 is still here, so probably the oldest one.
Okay. Yeah.
Looks like the oldest one. So, and now, which one is now left? 28 gone? Yeah, 28 is gone.
Oh, that was the last one, right?
Yeah, but I used the other ones in between.
Ah, okay.
So I think it goes by last used.
Okay.
Yeah. And if we would wait for 5 minutes, then it would also drop those. But I think we can skip the waiting.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's recap. To configure your cache that you created with add cache result and with some name, you go to your application properties and you configure these properties. You don't have to use them all, but you should use like the maximum size to limit the size of the cache to avoid that it can grow indefinitely and probably blow your memory. You can also configure the initial capacity. This is probably not so important most of the times. The default will also work. But you can use it to say, initially, I don't want to use like the maximum size already. So it can grow and continue using more and more memory if it needs it and not directly from the start. Expire after write allows us to let an entry expire a certain time after we have created it. So this helps you to stay up to date. If you need to refresh your cache every 5 minutes, that's what you want to do. And expire after access is basically a mechanism to get rid of it, of the entry, and free memory when nobody cares about it anymore. So whenever nobody has used that entry for 5 minutes. Okay.
Nice. So yeah, thank you for watching.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining.
See you next time.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.